welcome to episode 22 of the British Boxing Blog podcast. Return to normal format this week with myself, Andrew, and Stephen on the line.
Yeah, me, Stephen, dialing in this week. I know we said we're going to try and do more face-to-face, but we've been a bit rushed tonight, so the easiest way to do it is by phone again. So
Yes.
me.
So overall, the 22nd episode, including the specials that we've had in the last couple of weeks with Robbie Davis Jr. and North East promoter, manager, everything else, Steve Wraith there in the back catalogue if you want to go back and listen to those. Where do you want to start? Should we start with you and your opinion on the announcements today, Mr. King of the Casuals?
I will start. I can't believe I got called a casual on Facebook. I will start today and work back with the sort of quite bizarre Frank Warren BT Sport press conference today. It's sort of, I don't know, it was a strange format, and it left people. It felt like they missed a bit of a trick, missed a chance here to like really make some sort of statement, and don't know, it left them getting pelters again on social media. And I guess there was a few main talking points from that press conference. The first one, the main announcement was that. But it's funny because I was listening to Talk Sport there on my lunch today, and Gareth A. Davis was like, oh yeah, I'm going to the Fury BT Sport press conference soon, and says expecting, Fury Wilder to be May the 18th in either Vegas or New York, and but he wasn't ringing to talk about that. He was ringing to talk about Degale-Eubank, and that's all right, fair enough. But then it seemed like a bit of a curveball that seems to have caught a few people off guard today, that Tyson Fury signed that sort of exclusive USA agreement to box exclusively on ESPN in association with Top Rank and obviously still Frank Warren, which it left a few people bewildered. And I think everyone was expecting Fury Wilder 2 to be announced this week, and it hasn't been announced today, and from what I'm gathering maybe won't be announced this week and could even be in jeopardy. I know Frank Warren was quick in interviews today to say no, this deal doesn't affect that at all, but I'm not really sure how it doesn't.
It's hard to see how it won't affect it, to be honest.
Say that again?
It's hard to see how it won't affect it. Like, I've had it on social media with a few people, and just on the face of it, you've now got Fury, Wilder and Joshua all signed exclusively to different providers, different broadcasters. And obviously in the past we've had like simulcasts and where they've been shown on Showtime and like HBO and things like that for like the big fights. So it doesn't make it impossible, but it does. It makes, the way I put it earlier, it makes already unlikely fights even more unlikely.
I think it's muddied some already murky waters even a little bit more, and people are going, well, people are saying, oh, well, it's not Fury's fault, he has to look after himself, and I'm saying, well, we've never said that's not the case. And they're going, oh, it was different when AJ signed exclusively with that, and
But it wasn't, for me, it wasn't. That's the thing, like again, in their individual interest, that's fine, because they are looking out for looking out for number one. And someone put it about like Fury, what's he meant to do, and say, no, I don't want the $80 million or whatever it's going to be worth. I'm not signing that because I want to give the fans what they want. And it's like, well, no, because if I was in his position, I'd be doing exactly the same. But from an overall point of view of what's good for boxing and the fights that I want to see personally, it's not something that I'm particularly happy about, because it makes them less likely. Like, for example, you've seen Canelo signing a massive deal with DAZN, and his first fight on that was with Rocky Fielding, and it's like, well, from a boxer's point of view, why are you going to put yourself into more challenging and risky fights if you're getting paid millions and millions of dollars to... Like who's he going to fight? Who's within that sort of top rank stable at heavyweight that the Fury could possibly fight? Or like he's looking around the free agents and things. It's what you said there, like already muddying the waters. And if you think, right, you've got multiple TV broadcasters with fighters signed exclusively to them, so they can't fight on another channel. You've got fighters signed exclusively to different promoters who very publicly don't like working with each other. You've got multiple world titles in every division, so a boxer can get a title somewhat easily in some cases, defend that title and claim he's the world champion and not challenge himself and not push on. And see, that's what, like, I'm talking not just about the heavyweight division there. There's loads of examples of that throughout the divisions.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, you're totally right. And it is, like you say, it muddies those waters ever more, and you just... I don't know, everyone had assumed, and myself included, that Wilder Fury 2 is, a done deal, and maybe it still will be, but...
This is the thing, if it still is, if it comes out and that fight's announced, and that fight's made, like, as you said, Warren mentioned, they're still going to sit down and talk about it this week, but then Shelley Finkel, I think, had said that he wasn't aware of this deal that Tyson Fury was signing, and not that he would be necessarily, but he's like, he's still open to talk about it and things. So if, in the next week or two it gets announced and it happens and they work a way around it, then like brilliant, and all the best to all of them. But it's hard to see how it doesn't add another negotiating point.
Well, that's it, and I think if it doesn't get made, then it really puts a dent in the sport and in that division, because you've got that's the perfect scenario for a rematch was that one, the draw, the knockdowns, you've got those questions still, and it was just, if that doesn't get made, then I think it's just a proper shame, and then I think fans who are already frustrated on the back of last week's sort of Joshua Miller announcement, which hasn't gone down particularly well, and I get why, and I just think if heavyweight boxing misses another opportunity to put the best against the best again, and Fury Wilder 2, that looks like the more realistic fight that could be made out of all these sort of trio of fighters, then if that gets missed now, you just think, well, what's the point anymore? Do you know what I mean? It's like, we're just not, I don't know, we're just not getting any further forward, you're just taking a step back.
Well, that's it, because then you've got those three boxers then who are basically fighting against the rest, and it's going to be a case of who can outdo the other one, but like without fighting the best possible opponents. So it's almost like looking down the sort of the rankings and thinking, right, well, who can I fight that's going to be better than Wilder and Fury's opponents, or your Wilder, who are you going to fight that's better than the British guy's opponents? Like, do you look then at, obviously Dillian White's going to be in that bracket. He's obviously made it public that he's quite like open and free agent, not restricted by these sorts of things, and he's going to go his own route and try and get, looks like, the WBC route. So then obviously you've got Wilder fighting someone that Joshua's already beat. Like, who's Fury, as I said, who's Fury going to be fighting? It's like either Joshua or Wilder hasn't already fought that you think, that'll be a good fight.
No, there's a sort of...
I think the three of them individually are going to struggle to capture the public's imagination, and there's already a massive scrutiny on Joshua in particular, who he's going to fight.
Yeah, absolutely, I know. And I think the only saving grace of Joshua was that this fight was in America, and it's added maybe a little bit more intrigue to it, but not, I don't know.
This is the only thing in it. It's the fact that like they've sort of sold it as his American debut, and like somehow that makes it a little bit more special. But then it massively contradicts what he'd said about like when the Wilder negotiations were taking place, or reportedly taking place, whatever was actually happening. There's quotes on Joshua saying he's the A side, Wilder's the B side, so the B side should come over to the UK and fight there. Wilder's only got one belt, so he should do what Joshua says, and then you've suddenly got Joshua going over to America to fight someone who doesn't have any belts, doesn't have any real drawing power. It negates all those arguments, and it's like, well, why didn't the Wilder fight get made? Why were you willing to travel to fight Miller and not Wilder?
See that email the other day from Matthew, Joshua versus Miller breaks Madison Square Garden boxing pre-sale record. I'm like, bore off, man. Like, I don't know, that's just like a boxing pre-sale record at Madison Square Garden. I was like, why is that even a thing? Like,
but that's the thing. Was that even a measuring stick, or was that even a record before it's been announced by Matchroom?
It's like me saying, I don't know,
It's like a record. You can't quite beat Usain Bolt in the 100 meters, so you break the record. So you break the record for running the 100 meters backwards with a pint of milk on your head.
Well, that's it. A record that no one cares. Exactly.
Who's going to try and beat that? Who have they been competing against to break that record?
I know. Like Daniel Jacobs or something. Ridiculous. I just thought, what a stupid email.
And that's without going into like the whole intricacies of how many tickets have actually been pre-sale and pre-bought and pre-booked by StubHub or whatever.
Well, that's it. I think that's the stuff we've been rallying against the last week on social media, the two of us, and just like, just total saturation point with like that.
And as I say, this isn't like
I got that email, it just annoyed us.
This isn't part of like an anti-Matchroom brigade or anti-Joshua or anything.
It's
the three of them. I'm holding the three different parties, the three different teams. Like, as accountable as each other and not getting these fights made.
Well, that's it, and Frank, I don't know, we've sort of stuck the boot in again with him today on Twitter, just because the announcements just left us all a bit cold, and not just the Fury one, the ones that followed that as well. And I don't know.
They all left questions, and they left from what I've seen, a lot of it was a bit underwhelmed. And like I said, without having to dig, before that press conference, what was the mood? Were they I'd love to have been in there. Were they a bit apprehensive and think, oh, this isn't going to go down particularly well, but we need to put a positive spin on it? Or were they genuinely I've seen the word used in so many press releases, groundbreaking deal, and they're putting that out there. Is everyone meant to be brilliant? Fury's making all these millions. Let them crack on. Oh, this is going to be mint. I don't understand what their angle was.
Maybe they had a chance to strike out a bit differently with Tyson Fury, and it looks like it's just a bit of a copycat move, maybe from the Zone Matchroom deal, and I don't know, just sort of reacting a bit late to that and trying to copy in their footsteps.
But again, we're speaking from the fan point of view, and obviously the article I put out there with talking about purse splits and all the rest of it, which we're seemingly now doing, but how boring it all is. There's the issue, and I've said it for a while now, that the people involved in boxing, their number one priority isn't the same as what the fans want. It is their priority is, and it sounds cynical. It sounds like they're shitting on everyone, but their priority isn't the fans. If you're Frank Warren, you've just done an absolutely blinding deal by your client. You've just secured Tyson Fury, an absolute mint thing. So from that point of view, he's doing his job brilliantly. And again, from Tyson Fury's point of view, he's obviously set for life. You know what I mean? And again, it's in such a dangerous sport and profession, I don't begrudge them that, but then you can't then try and make out that you're making your decisions based on what the fans want, and you're doing it for the fans. Joshua was, I'm trying to fight in England, I want to fight in Wembley again because I don't want my fans to have to travel and that, and they're not actually. Well, we've struggled to get an opponent. Well, Jarrell Miller probably won't sell that well over here, so we'll go over to America and say we're cracking America.
Well, that's it, and they looked after that, and AJ is coming home, he's fighting in the UK, and today, honestly, this actually legit happening today, right? I was on my lunch over, and I seen something on Twitter, and it was, I forgot that AJ and Povetkin actually fought. I forgot about that fight, and I go on YouTube and I put AJ Povetkin highlights in, and I fast forwarded where he stopped him to see if it would ring any bells. I can't remember where I was, who I watched it with. Now those Wembley fights for me were just blurring sort of into one, Takam and Parker, and I don't know, I was bored of the whole Wembley thing, and I think maybe from my point of view, it's a little refreshing. I know it hasn't, it came out, he's fighting at Madison Square Garden due to their own shortcomings and misgivings and stuff, but I think that's the only saving grace for me, is that it's something different. It's not the bloody ring walk and Wembley, and I get sick of the Wembley shtick, and I was a bit bored of it, to be honest with you.
No, I 100% agree, mate. I absolutely agree. Even the Parker fight was the last one I thought, unification, that'd be a decent fight, and I thought Parker would go the distance and challenge him and all the rest of it. But you've got even that fight, that was obviously quite one-sided in the end, quite comfortable. And then the Takam fight, the Povetkin fight, and as you say, there was obviously the Pulev one was the one that was meant to be happening, was that in Cardiff, and then that was Takam, and it all as you said, it all just sort of blurred into one. It was AJ versus an opponent, and it didn't necessarily matter who that opponent was.
On Twitter, as I said to you before, me and you the last week have sort of expressed our dismay and sort of this whole split thing, but I think fans and people are getting obsessed with 60-40, 70-30 and what have you. But then I just think. Also, I think that's why the reaction, from what I've seen anyway today, has been pretty cold towards the Fury ESPN announcement. I think that's partly because of the Zone thing as well, because people have been underwhelmed by that. There was a degree of excitement when that first got announced, but the cards have pretty much mostly been kind of average at best. And I just think that fed through today as not another exclusive deal. And I think people are just a bit bored of it, you know what I mean? But, if he does announce the Wilder fight, say in the next few days and the next week, then people will be like, right, okay, you've got some faith in this, but if he doesn't, then I don't know. I think fans, a lot of people anyway, seem to be getting fed up with it. And again, like I said on Twitter, it's a great deal for all the individuals involved, but if you're asking from a fan's point of view, then it doesn't fill you with much hope. That's all I was trying to say.
No, I agree. I think it seems like more of the same, and I think recently it's been tougher than it probably needed to be to make like these good fights. And I think the part of the issue with the heavyweight division is they've got nowhere else to go. So like in terms of cementing their legacy or challenging themselves, making the big fights, they can't move up or down in weight, and it's like almost a bottleneck. It's like you've got these three at the top.
And then there's a gap. There's an ability gap as well. There's a skill gap between.
There is, I
those
think.
three as well.
I think Dillian White, probably Parker, that sort of level. They're like the bridge to it. And then you've got a lot of fights that, on the face of it, look ridiculous, but because of how limited the amount of top class heavyweights there are, that's going to be their options, and that's what I was saying before. Like you've got the three best are going to be going into fights where they're strong, like heavy favourites, and I think fans are a bit bored of that. Whereas like the reason that I think a lot of fans hold AJ in particular to like such a degree of accountability is because they rate him. Like with me, I don't hate him. I'm not a hater of AJ. Like if he goes and knocks Wilder out, knocks Fury out, which he could quite well do, like fair play to him. He's cleaned out the division, but I want to see him do that. As I've said it before, like I don't want to see him in these like procession fights where. And yeah, it is. It's like it's not his fault that he's so good and so talented, but like. That means then that, like as what you were saying, I'm bored by seeing him in with like opponents, and to be honest, I think Miller could prove quite durable, but I'd be absolutely amazed if Joshua doesn't win that fight.
Oh, same, without a doubt, yeah, me too.
Today's announcement, and obviously you can probably get people listening can tell how we feel about it. It wasn't quite on the like level of some of the previous ones where it's like an announcement that there'll be an announcement coming, and you just left totally wondering. At least there was sort of things being.
He has done that quite a lot. But
there's things being presented, but
the second part of the announcement today was the news that Billy-Joe Saunders is going to move up to super middleweight, and he's going to fight for the.
I was wondering where you were going with the next one. So yeah, we'll talk Billy-Joe Saunders now. So. Right. I noticed this morning, and it was only because someone on social media had put out a post about the WBO rankings, and Ramirez was ranked as number one contender at light heavy, so he's now like mandatory or in the position to challenge Kovalev for the WBO light heavyweight. Yeah. And Billy-Joe Saunders was ranked obviously very highly at 168 pounds in the super middleweight division. And I sort of looked at it and thought, oh, that's a bit odd. Like I was like, has Saunders actually fought at that weight class? I was like, was one of his last fights maybe like a catch weight above middleweight? And then he's got his ranking. But obviously, what's then transpired is Ramirez has vacated his belt and moved up in weight. Saunders obviously was stripped of the WBO title, and I think was he mandated to fight Andrade?
Yes, correct. That's right.
So that was like you think, oh, that's in the negotiation. And then what's happened is. Saunders has obviously left 160, left middleweight, moved up a division, and due to the WBO ranking system, their mandatory system, whatever you want to call it, they've inserted Saunders as mandatory to challenge now for, what's now the vacant WBO super middleweight title. Nice and clear.
Exactly, it's ridiculous, I know. And then the opponent today was just, it's like a Frank Warren sort of BT Sport opponent. It was just like. Well,
when you tweeted out about his record and said obviously if anyone hasn't box wrecked him, they're basically lying because like who was he? And then I noticed the name, like one of the names on his record that he'd actually lost to, and it was Darius Sek. And I was like, I know that record, so I went on and had a look for him. And right enough, it was the one that Anthony Yard had defeated quite recently. And that was considered a bit of a piss take for someone fighting, like for Anthony Yard fighting him, who's by all like credit is a good level of a prospect, I would say, still Yard, like he's untested. And then you've got this guy who's beat the guy who's now going to be challenging for a vacant world title. If the Fury announcement did a little bit, this has just completely summed up the state of like the muddy waters of boxing, as you just alluded to earlier.
That's it, and it's the WBO, it's Frank Warren. I don't know why I was surprised, but it was so underwhelming, and you just think, how's that going to sell out Wembley Arena unless or come anywhere close to it? I've got no idea.
But the problem is, like, that I've got with it, it's not just the WBO, like the WBA have pulled tricks like this, the WBC have got their diamond belts and all the rest of it, and they're all as bad as each other from that point of view. But obviously, you know, Frank has worked closely with the WBO in the past, so from that like side of it, it's no surprise. But what like sticks with me, and it's a little bit linked back to the heavyweights and their deals that they've signed. Like, you're going to have Billy-Joe Saunders, who's like going to potentially and probably be a 2-weight world champion without actually having fought anyone like who's world class. I mean, like Lemieux was up, like his biggest win by far, and like I know he beat Eubank Jr., but obviously that was when they were more sort of domestic European level. And like,
Andy Lee, did he mention Andy Lee?
I didn't. I saw. Yeah, of course, he beat Andy Lee for the middleweight belt, didn't he? Yeah. So I mean, yeah. To be fair, he's got then 2 and a bit, 3 good names at a push on his record, and he'll
well, that's it.
2-weight world champion.
We're giving him a free pass there, right? He wins that.
To be fair, I overlooked that one.
He's not going to turn that down. If he wins that fight, then I don't know. Does he go for the win of Degale-Eubank?
Well, he was linked with Degale, wasn't he?
He's not going to fight Callum Smith. We know that. So
he was linked with the Degale fight, like before the Degale-Eubank was announced, and again, you're thinking, you know, quite intriguing fight, but nothing that's going to sort of set fire and catch the light really well.
Absolutely. The Eubank fight is probably the one that you can, you know, see happening, because they've always maintained that sort of bad blood, inverted commas, over social media since the first time they fought and stuff, and that fight sells, I guess. But I don't know. I've got no. If he judges middleweight, you know, reign as a yardstick for what is super middleweight, and he could fight absolutely anyone, you know. Like, as I say in a lot of podcasts, I went to bloody Paisley Leisure Centre to watch him fight.
Not many casuals have done that, eh?
Against that kid that fought Andrade, and you're just like, I don't know, you lose the faith that he's gonna.
And again, we come back to, I hate like keep banging on about, but the fans versus the boxers. If you ask the fans, Billy-Joe Saunders is almost, and to me, like, forgetting that he beat Andy Lee, which is a really good win. He's synonymous with like that inactive title reign, and like his lack of quality defences, the sort of the amount of time spent out of the ring, and not fighting Golovkin, not fighting Canelo, not fighting like now Andrade, and it's a shame. But then from his point of view, as I say, he could be a 2-weight world champion, retire a multi-millionaire. Like, you know what I mean, starting over in the sport, that's a pretty successful career. Like, he's won the British, he's won Commonwealth, I think he won English, he's won like the European title. He's like a highly successful boxer.
That's it, exactly that.
And yet there's still this lingering criticism over almost wasted potential to a certain extent, and it seems bizarre discussing someone like that who's achieved so much in the sport.
I know, and I think people get, obviously a few of his fights fell through and stuff, and surely he has to try and make this a key year, and at least fight 2 more times after this one in April. But you know, I'm assuming he's going to have far too much of this fella who I've never heard of. I don't know, it's just very, again, underwhelming, and then that was the second part of the announcement, so people were already a bit miffed about the Fury one, you know. And then he went on to that, and the third one was that this Saturday's show that was scheduled in Leicester has been pulled. So, you know, you cancelling the show there, rearranging the show 5 days notice.
There's been rumours about that for ages, hasn't it? Like, there's been certain boxers and like on that card, and some of them have apparently been aware of it and sort of packed in training and like knowing that, you know, like tapered the training off, ready to start again because they know it's going to be in a few weeks' time. And then there's others still trying to shift tickets for it and like seem totally unaware that it wasn't happening.
Again today it was like, Sambo and Will headline against an opponent that'll still be announced, and you're like, well, they just don't do this. He doesn't do so many favours sometimes and stuff like that, Frank Warren. Like,
the tickets were still on sale on the website after the announcement, apparently.
I know. And he used to do announcements about announcements, which I know that, again, I think people were just a bit, yeah, right, okay, so you've moved that one. Fair enough. It's the 23rd of March now. It clashes with the Matchroom Cotterbox show, which, you know, which is a far superior show, I guess, really, unless they pull something out of the bag there. They've got the Royal Albert Hall show, which, to be fair, is actually not bad. You know, it's a good venue. March the 8th, I think. That's the Liam Williams Mullender one. I think Dubois on that as well. That's a decent little one. And then the other announcement was that Josh Warrington, Kid Galahad, date hasn't been announced yet, but it won't, whenever it does get announced, it won't be on pay-per-view. And I put on social media, I was like, why is that an announcement? Like, why are you announcing? It's just, I never thought it would be. But then
someone messaged just, didn't they, saying it was about, like, Eddie Hearn had intimated that it probably would be on pay-per-view, and it's almost like they try to do, like, one-up each other all the way along, and it's like, well, again, easier said than done, but just concentrate on your own stuff, and try and do the best you can do. Like, if we generally, like, again, it's not the same, but if we worried about every other, like, boxing website and Twitter account that was going, we wouldn't have any time to do any of our own stuff.
Oh, exactly right. You should have heard us slagging them off before.
That's all off the record.
No, that's it, exactly that. And I just thought, well, you know, I was glad that chap pointed it out, because I thought, if I missed something, why would I be? Like, I think it's a decent fight, honestly.
I think it's a really good. And the thing is, that's a mandatory defence, and it's again probably one that wouldn't have been made if it wasn't mandatory, because it's obviously matchroom fighter and, like, Frank Warren fighter going at it. But I think because Galahad's not one of Hearn's sort of crown jewels, he's happy to send him in as the mandatory. Like, obviously, Kid Galahad will be confident he can beat Warrington and all the rest of it, but it's not one where he's, like, risking a lot by sending him over. Like, if he didn't put him in that fight, there aren't many better options out there for him. It would be quite hard for him to swerve that one and get himself into a position anyway. Like, he's obviously been IBF, working his way up the IBF route, and then Warrington in the meantime has won that belt, so it's not, probably wasn't their plan A to fight him, but now it's there. It's like it's been made, and it's been enforced, but it's one of the rare occasions where, like, a sanctioning body enforced a mandatory probably produced a better fight than if that wasn't taking place.
Absolutely, it is. It's a decent fight. Galahad's a fighter that, I don't know, leaves me a bit cold, sort of. I just feels like he's been around forever, and I know he had his drugs ban and stuff, and I don't know, he was, unless he shot, I can't see him beating Warrington, that's all, and that's mental, because I've sort of, the last two Warrington fights I thought he'd get beat, Selby and Fountain, but then, you know, I'm
never going against him now. Like,
I'm not going against him again now. I think he'd be far too relentless for Galahad. I think he'll have too much for him. But again, that'll be a fight at Leeds, you know, it's not far from us, what, an hour and a half or something? You wouldn't mind going down to that, but...
I'd love to, Then again, it's free now, so I can just sit in the house and watch it.
Well, that's it, yeah, it's not pay per view, I will not go. So there's that one, that was on there as well, and I think that was it, and it was sort of just a bit, alright, so there are your announcements. Like, don't know, it wasn't, the Saunders one never really got people going, the Fury one sort of maybe added a cloud of uncertainty.
And it was all quite hurried as well, wasn't it? Like, as far as I'm aware, it was sort of relatively short notice and stuff, and it just, as you say, like, there wasn't one thing in there that's made everyone sort of sit up and be like, oh, bloody hell, they mean business, or this is happening. And, like, the Fury thing could have done that, because obviously it is, like, it is a massive deal in terms of the finances and what it means for them, but as I think with everything now, boxing fans are so used to getting, like, the short end of the stick that generally I think in a lot of cases people do look for the negatives, but then they weren't too difficult to find in these sorts of things. Like, boxing fans are generally expecting the worst from these sorts of deals at the moment.
But I guess
and the fact they've crammed all three in as well, it's sort of like, I don't know, almost get the impression they're trying to distract from what's actually, like, you know what I mean? You don't know where to start. Like, we would think, oh, you start with Fury, and then Galahad. Oh, well, Galahad and Warren, it's not pay per view, so that's actually good news. But then, as you were saying, like, why would it be? Like, suddenly is Josh Warrington now a box office fighter? And
well, Martin from New Age Boxing said that today. He's like, if you just look at it, you know, the cold hard facts. It's like it's February the 18th today. February the 18th today, and they're banging on about their output, BT Sport. They haven't thrown a single punch so far this year, and you know, I don't even know. The show this weekend's been cancelled, so I don't know when BT Sport's next actual show is. 8th of March, like they've put nothing out there this year. So
well, that's the thing, because lots of us, like lots of people, including us too, have spoken about this apparent pressure from Sky towards Matchroom to start getting shows on, and have they spread themselves too thin? But the way they're getting away with it, because the main competition hasn't really produced anything either, and you've got when they struck that deal with BT, you thought, right, this is going to be like the rocket up Sky and Matchroom's backside to really force them into some good things, but both sides seemingly are, like, struggling at the moment to consistently nail down quality shows and good fights.
Absolutely, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think Matchroom's slow start, which it hasn't been capitalised on at all by any of them, and I guess that probably leads us. The one party that have came out of it looking half decent is sort of ITV's resurgence, I think, probably because of this Saturday's fight.
Seamless link there, but I agree.
And a decent little undercard as well. I know it's pay-per-view and whatever, is it not? But it is. And you know, you've got Joe Joyce on the undercard. I think Lee Selby's still on there, a couple of others. And obviously the main event, which has got people talking this week.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because you see the split again. Like, you've got loads of people paying, like, really looking forward to it and happy to pay for it, and then others are like, oh, it's never pay-per-view, blah blah. And again, I don't know whether that's like pre-allegiances to Warren, to Hearn, and just dismissing it because it's ITV or what. But like, for me, it seems like, as you say, it's a decent little card. It's like, it's an intriguing main event, and it's a main event that still has some sort of sway at the top of that division. You can argue that Degale's not what he was, and Eubank's never really been at that elite level. But whoever wins is in a cracking position to get right in amongst it, among the champions. It's not like a Hearn Bellew fight at heavyweight where whoever won that was never really going to get in the mix.
No, exactly. Do you think Degale wants to be back in there with the champions, or
honestly, no?
He was a champion, wasn't he?
But this is the thing. I think his actions have spoken in the fact that he vacated his title. Like, he could have held on to his title and defended it against his mandatory. It was Katagi, wasn't it? Like, it was sort of hailed as this massive punching, like, wrecking machine, and he's since lost. So, like, you think, well, Degale, I don't think personally thought for the money he'd get for that, I don't think he wanted any part of him. And he's looked around at the other options, and then, like, it was in the it wasn't like the gloves are off, because obviously ITV can't call it that, but it was like the head-to-head thing, and you had like Eubank, Degale sat opposite, and if you look past all his silly little childish laughing, like his fake laugh at everything Eubank said and stuff, when Degale was actually speaking, he actually spoke a lot of sense. He basically said that he had this mandatory. Al Heyman told him to sit tight for a few days, and then he had this Eubank offer, and he was like, well, in his mind, it was an easier fight for more money.
Yeah,
and again, like, it's that thing of going against what the fans want, because fans want boxers to fight the best and challenge themselves and put themselves in these tough fights. But he's also like sort of announced it as a retirement fight, in that he knows he's getting to the end and he wants a big payday to see him off into retirement. And in my prediction article that we've put online recently, I put that normally that would see me sort of side against that sort of boxer and that attitude, because it's like, no, well, like, he knows he's on his way out. Is he going to have everything that he needs to? But there was something about the way he was saying it and the way he's like sort of summing up Eubank, and like, again, it was sort of a brutal honesty about it, that he was like, well, I think like I'm better than Eubank. It's a winnable fight for a lot of money, and I don't know. Like, again, normally I think, oh, is he overlooking him? But he acknowledged that Eubank has some like skills and attributes. And he's like, oh, he's tough. He's got a good engine, blah blah. But he's saying after his surgery how refreshed he was, and that he just seemed like had that like calm sort of confidence about it. Whereas like Eubank, on the other hand, obviously super confident as ever, but didn't really say anything like of substance. It was just all the like the cliches and things of like, like, I don't know, it was hard to put my finger on, but they talked about like Degale talked about Eubank's previous losses, and Degale was like sat there and he's like giving him a chance to speak, and then Eubank said, no, like, the past's the past. We're not talking about the past, we're talking about the here and now, which again does ring true to a certain extent. It just made me wonder, like, how much, even with his new trainer, has Eubank actually learned and like been willing to listen, and has he looked at the Groves fight and thought, oh, well, this is what I need to do to get inside Degale, or has he just made the fight hoping that Degale's completely past it?
I think it is a bit of that. I don't think Eubank will change now. I think it's too late in the day for Eubank to suddenly, oh, he's got a new trainer, he's just going to start boxing. You know, I think he'll fight one way, and that's. But then maybe that's the way he has joy in this fight, you know, because, you know, banking on Degale being past it, like people have said. I heard Degale today say that he's trained like a clever 30-odd-year-old, however old he is, just saying he hasn't overdone it and stuff. And I don't know, like, you look at those two Truax fights and you think, well, how much does he have left? And I think that's what swayed me. I think Eubank could stop him maybe later, and you'd think, right, is it only going to go two ways? Will it be Degale points, or will it be a Eubank stoppage? Degale points, yeah, Eubank stoppage. Degale could stop him, I guess, but I don't think he will.
See, honestly, this was another thing that like Degale said, and he was talking, and I can't remember who it was. It was Gabriel. I think he was doing like the interviewing. Gabriel
Clark.
I was Gabriel Clark. Couldn't remember his surname there, and he was doing it, and like Eubank turned to him at certain times, and he was saying like, he was like, Degale turned to him, and he was saying like, Eubank, he's like, he's tough. He's like, I'm probably not going to stop him. He's like, this is going to be a 12-round schooling, and he's like, I might stop him. Like, don't rule it out, but. He was in his mind, like, I think he's prepared to, like, for that 12 rounds, and obviously that's his sort of style, innit? Like, he's out-point him and out-slick him almost, but again, he acknowledged that he wasn't, like, this over-the-top, I'm going to smash you, I'm levels above you, and it was, like, quite again, for Degale's standards, quite a, like, calm interview, with some of the things he was saying, but, despite me backing Degale, I think, obviously, for anyone listening that hasn't read the piece, read it first. But then, spoiler alert. I think Degale wins up like close points. I think just what you were saying there, Eubank's style is going to be to get in on top of him and try and unload a bit more than he did against Saunders and Groves. And the age Degale is, I think he'll have more joy doing that. I think Degale is guilty even in his peak of spending a bit too much time on the ropes, and that's going to play into Eubank's hands. So I can see Eubank picking up rounds, definitely. He could even outwork him, because obviously he doesn't necessarily have that massive punching power to stop Degale. I think if he does stop him, like you said, it'll be late on through an accumulation of shots rather than that one heavy shot. But again, it wouldn't surprise me to see like Eubank outpoint him and outwork him over the 12. But I think, I don't know, it's just something I think Degale maybe has one more big performance left in him, and then...
I hope so. I hope he does have that one more in him, I really do.
The reason it's so intriguing, though, is because you've got that intrigue, that mystery over how fit Degale is, and I think a few of the recent like domestic fights we've seen, obviously I mentioned Hay and Bellew, you've seen the favourite go in and be nowhere near his physical best, and then like get exposed because of it. You could argue a similar one with Groves and Callum Smith. You had the younger fight, so like, I know Bellew wasn't like massively younger, but in those occasions you had like the younger underdog sort of
good examples.
Get the torch passed on, and it's like, well, they've now, Groves and Hay have now retired, so then you've got like, is it going to be the same sort of thing? And also stylistically, Degale struggles like against, like we've talked about Truax there, the recent one, when fighters put it on him and force him back. And Eubank struggles against boxers who can move, and
well, that's it.
And that's why there's such a split on who's going to win. I think now it's going to go.
Well, that's it. And I think Degale, if you're a boxer and you've came up the way Degale has, Olympics, GB, amateur career, you back yourself, even if you know you're not at your best anymore or whatever. But if you're a boxer, and I'm saying that in technical terms, a boxer, you'd 100% back yourself to beat Eubank. Do you know what I mean?
I would always back a skillful boxer over a brawler. I've said that many a time. And
absolutely. And the only where the doubt and the intrigue comes into it is it's the physicality now of Degale. Is he, like you just named a couple of examples there, where sort of Father Time injuries have caught up to David Hay, George Groves, and we spoke about this a few times on the pod, me and you, that it's that generation now is coming to an end, and he's made no secret of that, and these are his cash-out fights. It could be his last fight together if he gets stopped, and if he got stopped badly. If not, if he wins, then he might have another one. But these are his money fights, do you know what I mean? They're his retirement fights, I guess. You know what I mean? Like Bellew had his, George Groves made a good few quid, and he is coming to an end, and we know that. We know it's not peak Degale anymore, which, peak Degale would beat Eubank Jr., no bother, we know that, but that's again now where this intrigue's come from Saturday, and it's what I'm looking forward to actually. When you know that you're going to be in, I know I'm going to be in the house because I'm getting a operation on Thursday, so I know I'll be laid up, I'll be watching, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to take in the full card. Unfortunately, I'll miss the match, so I'll be in. But anyway, I'll be tuned in fully and obviously live tweeting as I do throughout things and stuff. So I think you're away for it though, aren't you? I
am, but I'm on a stag do, and the stag doesn't know where we're going or anything that's happening, so I can't. I can't reveal any more in case he's listening, because I know he does listen occasionally.
I'm sure you'll have fun in Blackpool, I'm sure. But
that's where he's been told we're going, funnily enough.
I'm looking forward to it. It's what I'm looking forward to. I'll pay the money and off we go. I'm definitely looking forward to that. I think quite a weekend boxing wise. Apart from that, I think you've got one of the DAZN show from Mexico is on in the early hours of Sunday morning. I think there's also.
I was thinking of that one when you were talking about the quality of the shows. Since it's Brandon Rios's return to Mexico against Humberto Soto, isn't it? And it's like who's that appealing to? Like, obviously, again, like the Mexican audience, and there's a chance they'll get some decent figures off it in America and that. But like,
it could be a fun fight for as long as it goes.
When that's like one of the selling points of DAZN is that we in the UK are going to be getting these extra shows. Like,
exactly.
That's going to. Like, I know that I've been on Sky. That's going to, like, I'm not in the country. I'll not be watching it. But even if I was, that would be testing my hardcore boxing credentials. Whether I was going to stay up and watch that or record that one.
You know, I think I've made a bit of a resolution to myself this new year and try and watch as much stateside stuff as I can.
Well, am I right in thinking that if you get the Eubank Degale card, you always get get Durrell and Avni Yildirim?
Yildirim, you're right. You do get that. That's correct.
Again, that's like another one that similar to the Rios Soto one. Like, it's not one I'd think, I'm definitely going to watch that, but it could be quite a fun fight. Like, Yildirim's tough enough. Like, so Eubank Jr. stopped him, but like, he seems game enough opponent. Durrell nowhere near his best, and you never know what you're going to get with him, really. So could be entertaining in its own little bizarre way.
Well, that's it. Will that be recordable though, or will it be on the Boxer? I'm not getting up at 3 a.m. to watch that.
That's what I mean, isn't it? It's like, it's testing your patience, like your ability to watch a show. That I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if it'll be on the if you pay for it on the box office, whether you'll get the repeats of it or what.
But it is, I guess it's a good thing, at least they're throwing that in there. It sort of consolidates that good start they've had. You know, we mentioned like Pacquiao, Broner and stuff they've had on already.
I was just thinking the Thurman fight, Thurman Lopez was on the ITV player and stuff like that weekend. I watched that on the Sunday morning, and yeah, as I say, it's interesting that like ITV are dipping their toes in a bit more now. I know obviously there's the links with the PBC and like Al Heyman and like putting a bit of back in their way, but. Like again, we've said in the past, the more. But
if you do love your boxing and you know you can watch anything, then I guess as a consumer, if you know, I'm talking if you have the full packages here, Sky, BT, ITV, blah blah blah.
Box Nation.
You've probably never had it so good. You know what I mean?
No, that's what I mean. Like,
just watch boxing on the television.
Yeah, those sorts of fights and stuff. Like it's not like again, not necessarily going to stay up and watch them all live, but if they're available on demand as it is now, 2019, like. You can sit and watch those on the weekend. There's probably like 3 or 4 boxing shows a weekend, like on a good weekend.
Absolutely. That's it. You've never had it so good. Speaking of staying up till 3 a.m. watching.
And Box Nation, go on.
It leads us nicely on to Box Nation.
I'll give you the highlight of our weekend.
Friday night's show, yes, on the Showbox card. Fighter that we know well from the northeast here. Tommy Ward, former British super bantamweight. It's funny because in the week, you know, leading up to the fight, everyone, he's a secret. No one's heard of Tommy Ward. And it's like, well, he actually was British champion. You know, forget that. But
I know, like, it's the thing is as well. Like, he's another one he's won the British title, and like again, slightly hypocritical because we know him, and it's like sort of defending his decision to vacate the belt. Obviously, there was talk of the rematch with Jazza Dickens that didn't necessarily happen. I know Jazza's massively annoyed and frustrated about that, and to be honest, it was a decent first fight. Obviously ended slightly controversially on a cut. I think Tommy was probably winning anyway, but like it would have been a fine fight to see again. But then from Tommy's point of view, you've got the chance to get yourself in amongst the world rankings and working towards a world title. You can see why he's made that decision.
He fought after Jazza. I think he fought for, I think it was the IBF European or something, and he beat Spaniard up in Durham. I forget his name, Rodriguez, maybe he was called.
Yeah, was it that one? I think that might even have been my commentary debut, that show.
Yes, that one. And then this WBO World Title Eliminators opportunities came along. I think the sort of impression I got from like Tommy and his team, and that was that these, you know, the money behind the American lad, Tommy was ranked quite highly with the WBO. They thought, right, this is our chance. We'll get this kid over from England. Not many, you know, but 4 stoppages on his 20-odd fight record and that. And, you know, I think they sort of really underestimated him. And, you know, he was on the Showbox card over there, so obviously the money was behind this guy. Jesse Angel Hernandez. And Tommy went over there on Friday night, and we'd followed his camp closely, through the last sort of 10 days since he's been over there. He was in New York with Lewis Ritson, and obviously he's training Neil Fannin, his brother Martin and stuff. They were all over there.
Just the fact that he'd been over there, and they mentioned it in the commentary, like he'd been over there for 2 weeks before the fight.
Yeah, that's right.
That sort of shows you just how seriously they were taking it. They never saw themselves as the Americans saw them, as just the opponent.
That's it, and I know every trainer backs the fighter, but
he actually went in as the betting favourite as well, Tommy.
He was odds on favourite, and Neil said to us, he's like, honestly, he's world class, and he is. And we've always been huge fans of Tommy, like stylistically. The only doubt was that, people say he can't punch in the.
But I think just what you've said there about the Americans looking at his record, they're not going to have scouted him in great detail. They've seen 4 stoppages from, like as you said, it's now 26 fights he's now had, and I think a lot of fans probably look at that as well, because he was signed with Frank Warren. He's fought on the Matchroom card recently up in Newcastle, and for whatever reason, he hasn't made that big step up over here. He hasn't got that big backing over here, and he's had to go and do it his own way, which is credit to him and his team. But again, there's that almost a lack of interest, and I think after Friday night, and obviously you watched it live, you can talk a bit more detail about it. But after that performance and just how sort of convincing it was. It was generally a sensational 10-round display of boxing. It was brilliant, and I think that'll now maybe wake a few more people up, either stateside and over here.
But like you just said, there that I think he's a popular lad, but he's not maybe the biggest seller, and I know that counts a lot in this country. And as you say, Frank sort of flirted with him for a bit, but he's not that fighter where you could sell out Newcastle Arena and he's not like that Ritson type. Like there wasn't that he would be on undercards like he was. Not sure, was he on the Smith Williams undercard that time? I can't recall now. He might have been up here.
I think he was, yeah.
He was on the Matchroom one, just in a sort of on the Ritson Patera one, he knocked some kid who was absolutely hopeless. Remember him, Tom Tran? And he stopped him quite early, remember?
But he had a decent record, Tran, when he started out. But yeah, I mean, as soon as we saw that one, it was like even Tommy was thinking, right, he's going to finish this kid soon. He's got him in loads of bother. And I think, again, the commentary team sort of touched on it. It was interesting how they changed their tune a bit over the course of the fight. But they were saying, he's only got the 4 stoppages, or is it 4? Maybe 5.
I think
but
that is maybe
3 of his last stoppages came in his 6 of his last fights, so he's maybe grown into himself a bit more. He's only 24, is he? 24, 25-year-old?
Yeah, still a young kid, really. And I think that was the thing with, maybe that's what's put people like Eddie Hearn off, and if he's not a great puncher and he hasn't got the sort of ticket sales behind him, then he's had to sort of do the hard way, Tommy. I say do the hard way because he never actually had a senior amateur career. He was only a junior. He was a very, very good amateur, a good junior amateur, and he turned over at 17 or something, 18, and then he's won the British title, but then.
I think that's why he's had so many fights as well. You think how many 4-rounders has he had against tough journeymen that are just there to get through the rounds? He's been fighting on the small hall scene. And he's been doing that for obviously several years now, and it probably, I'm not saying that he is a sort of puncher in disguise, but it doesn't probably do the power he actually possesses justice, because how many times would he have just been happy to get to do the 4 rounds and outbox them over 4 rounds?
And he's a good fighter in that regard, like we say, stylistically he comes from a travelling family, and he's a really classic boxer, and I don't know if that's relevant or not, but he's sort of like a little Tyson Fury, do you know what I mean?
No, it is, definitely. He's obviously grown up in that environment, and we were just talking about Billy-Joe Saunders earlier, they've got that sort of natural skill about them, and composure in the ring, which counts for a lot.
That's a good comparison, the Billy-Joe one, but anyway, going back to the fight anyway, we were chuffed because we knew he was going over there. Then Box Nation had picked it up a couple of weeks before, and we were delighted. And as I said to you, we'd sort of tracked their progress in camp throughout the duration of it, and did a lot of good numbers with them on social media and stuff, and kept over them and kept in touch with them over there, and got updates from the manager and stuff. And anyway, he boxed. I got up about 3 o'clock, set my alarm early hours Saturday morning, and he was absolutely fantastic. He just totally outclassed this guy, this Hernandez.
And for all the talk of his lack of power, that 4th round.
That 4th round shot,
Oh my God.
It was unbelievable left hook, and he rolled out, and it was just stunning, and he put him down, and I think the video we put on Twitter did about 28,000 views, and probably the same on Facebook and stuff, and it just went absolutely wild.
It was just how tight the actual hook was. Like, the commentary team again, like, it was funny because like my girlfriend was watching it as well, and she was like, on the replay, the commentator was saying something about like, oh, they both sort of threw at the same time, but then on the replay, Tommy had like slipped, thrown his shot, landed, and was halfway through rolling out when Hernandez's left hand came up to throw the punch, and it was all within that like split second, just how much quicker he was.
And that was the case all night, and that sort of summed up the performance. Really, it was textbook. You know, people expected Hernandez to be the come forward fighter, but Tommy matched him with that. Tommy actually came forward and sort of went for him, and Hernandez was just didn't have any answers at all. He didn't know. You know, you could see the panic in his corner towards the later round, saying you're gonna have to knock him out. And truth be told, he never really came close.
But I think even if you look back prior to that, like that picture perfect left hook. Even before that, there was a couple of shots, and even like the straight right hand to the body, it didn't like hurt Hernandez, but it just deterred him, and you could see him just take that little half a second to compose himself after a couple of the shots, which just made me think like, oh, you know, Tommy maybe has matured a bit, and he's not got that concussive power, but he had enough to get Hernandez's attention straight away, like really early on in the fight. And
it's a good point you made there, because you know after that sort of fourth round knockdown, he never
put it on him, did he?
He never had him down again. He never looked to finish him early in the fifth, because it was right on the bell on the fourth, but it was just a really measured display, and he won unanimously on all three judges, which was nice, and they were wide, and they were as wide as they should have been, and it was...
That's the thing, from Tommy's point of view, like Ward, obviously, he kept his composure. It was really nice to see.
Yeah.
But then from Hernandez's point of view, he looked so disheartened. Like, his output just dropped, and he did try and put it on him a bit later on when he was desperate. But he didn't get any joy. And like, again, you look at, I don't like going just solely on punch stats, but you look at like Hernandez, I think he landed a quarter of his shots, and there were a lot fewer thrown than Ward. And like, it must be so frustrating, and as I said, disheartening to be thrown and missing for most of the fight. You're going to be like, it's going to be upsetting. It's going to be physically tiring, and then for like someone so fast to be coming back at you and landing very accurately for most of the fight. I mean, you mentioned his corner there, like how desperate they were getting. Say, I think from about the 6th or 7th round, they were saying you're going to have to knock him out. And then even the ref came over and was like, "You're going to have to show me something." I think he actually said like, "You're taking a whooping, and I'm not going to, or you're taking abuse," and I'm like, "You need to do something." Basically, it's like he was looking like he was going to stop the fight and jump in, and it was just so one-sided. And one of the things I noticed when I was watching it, I said again, like to my girlfriend, I was like, I expected to be so nervous watching this, even if it was remotely close as to whether he'd get the nod, and at no point was I even considering that he wasn't going to get that decision. It was just...
No, absolutely. Even the judges couldn't stop
absolutely
that.
Dominant.
Even the most corrupt judges couldn't have, halted that one. He was class, he was really good, and, obviously we sort of bang that northeast drum, and because we don't get many chances like that from fighters up here, and, sometimes they slip by, like, Ritten's last fight and stuff. But this one for Tommy, he's like really propelled him into that world mix now. He was in it before, but he's probably in it now. It's just...
I was going to say, because that was it was an eliminator, but it wasn't like necessarily a final eliminator.
No, it wasn't. It was an eliminator, but you would like to think maybe he would get a bit for, someone over here could maybe help out. I don't know, maybe or unless he travels again. And I think travelling is obviously in his background, and it hasn't deterred him one bit going over there. And from the impression I got, I think the whole camp absolutely just loved every minute that they were over there, and just took it in their stride, and just came and did a job on Hernandez, and it was great to see. So it was great for Tommy to do that, and chuff for him, chuff for everyone involved. Really good.
I like hopefully like now he's obviously ready to push on and get himself right in the mix for a world title. It was a WBO, wasn't it? So like
WBO, aye.
Hopefully, I don't know the situation with the champion when he's going to be defending it, but you're going to be looking like, I don't know, well, hopefully within the next year he's going to be in the shot of the world title.
Hopefully it will be, aye, and I think a few people will probably take note of him again after that, and it's put him on people's radar if he wasn't already. But I think that left hook especially, he's done the numbers on social media on a few different accounts this weekend. So very good. Really pleased for him and for everyone associated with him in the northeast. Delighted for him.
Mm-hmm. Anything else that you want to cover? I think we've nailed pretty much everything going on this week.
I think we've covered everything we've set out to, so I think think we'll probably catch up again after you're back from your stag do, and we'll reflect on Degale-Eubank after that.
We'll see who's right. So the Degale points are yours as a Eubank stoppage. We'll see.
I'll go Eubank late stoppage. You go Degale points. So we'll discuss next time.
Right, sound mate.
No worries. All right, pleasure. Speak soon.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right, cheers mate. Thanks. Bye.